but you'll figure it out by the end of the talk. We're going to start with Dave's plane here. Dave's going to talk about some of the cool stuff he's done. The Klaus is going to correct him. And then we're going to continue down the line, and it's at Klaus's discretion how far and how long we go. Okay? Be ready with your questions. And everything you ever wanted to know about Canard, you'll have figured out by the time. We're walking. Walking right to the propeller. There you go. Take it away.
This by Lycon IO320, done by Lycon, Visalia, California. 10.5-to-1 compression pistons, gate prop. It's pretty much just a race prop. I need to get a regular prop, a long one, not so short. This is a new profile I tried to copy off of Klaus to improve the profile. It's too low. Down here, I chopped that portion out of a sport flight by Sport Flight many years ago, and then brought it up gently. And here's the old profile. It came up too sharply to here, and so there was a big bubble of separation right there where the loading area used to be. What else? Well, I'm proud of my bolt outlet duct. Had too much trouble at high altitude and kind of cruise in the winter. Didn't get the oil temp up, so I put that on there. I've got a valve to control it in the cockpit. I can warm it up at any temperature now. I took it off for the summer. That didn't drop the temp any, so I'm just going to put it up on, I think, year round from here on out. Questions on that? Strakes and wings are stock. I recontoured just a little bit at Gary Hirschner Systems. Started to get falling and glass more after that. I think it helped a little bit. But he says I should take it back a little bit further.
When you say take it back, you're talking about drops?
Instead of turning up this sharply, should extend it out further like this to keep it gentle and extend this line to join the two lines.
Well, the extension here, how far you have to go here, depends on where you're coming from. So take a picture of this height from here and here, and compare that to my airplane later. Obviously, if this is 2 inches higher, then you have a much shallower angle and you don't have to go so far back. So raising that is very important.
Winglets are all stock. I need to add a trick at that intersection. Full flow and tough testing have shown that that's typical dirty intersection there. Added the fairing to the bottom of that because I never installed the lower winglets. So that was pretty dirty there. There's a flat surface there. There's a bit of upflow. So the flow is hitting on the bottom of a flat surface.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
So, if you look at this winglet or this rudder extending all the way to the bottom, and that rudder not extending to the bottom, when you deflect this, there's a big vortex coming off of the bottom. And when you capture that fixed, that's like a vein that stops that vortex. So you always want to capture the control surface with a fixed surface, like putting a fence there on horizontally to stop that vortex. So the effectiveness per span of the rudder is greater if you fix part of it.
So you're not a fan of the long rudder. You would rather see the
I would rather see it like that.
Okay. And I also noticed a lot of people are clipping the bottom of the
Yeah.
vertical. Is this now the optimal way without, I mean,
The question is, what's the optimum way of the lower winglet? obviously, the way I did it on mine is what I think is optimal. There might be a better way, but as far as I know, that what my thinking is right now, that's what I think is best.
So you're not thinking that there's anything better that you can do at this time?
Not on that wing. Dave?
I've got the standard fuel sumps on the bottom. I blended them into the cowling. But still, it's bad because that's a pump, and then your gear leg is a bump, and that compresses the air there. Klaus has eliminated his. He doesn't have any sumps. That's all I got. Any questions?
Why do you press them on the nose?
Pardon me?
Why do you press it on the nose?
You got to get going really fast before the tail comes up.
It's praying.
Can you comment on the fuel sump and how to get lower drag, or is that as good as it can be?
Nope, well,
That's as good as it can be if you have sumps there. The next best thing is to not have sumps there. And I can show you what I did on mine.
It permanently attacks put your bearings on instead of using duct tape. Was it?
permanently instead of duct tape? Probably so.
No. Okay.
Thanks, guys. It's all yours, Klaus.
All right, let's go take a look at this. So this is the what I was talking about, and if you know where that rudder needs to fly, then you can make these gaps like a keystone, so it stops and seals itself in normal flight without leakage. And in autopilot flight, you normally don't have the need to use the rudders. So, but I did something new this year. I have a mechanism in here that can deploy these rudders about that much in flight. Up to that much. I can graduate it just a little bit, makes a big difference. And that's because the winglet is shorter, and the airplane it lost a lot of drag even on this wing with the new Strakes. So it's quite unstable in turbulence. So in turbulence, I eliminate most of the yaw by deflecting that, increasing the yaw stability. So this is raised up a little bit. It's flow tested. It's near perfect at high speed flight. In turns, it goes up about like this. We can see the ailerons. They're both deflected down because they're flaperons. They're flap. Yeah, that's why they're both down. Okay. So for landing, they come down a little bit, and for cruise flight, they go up, reflex a bit, both of them. And I can do that because I built a different elevator that's more powerful and it's also slightly bigger.
Those of you have this, who doesn't?
I don't know why he doesn't have those. They help, yeah. So you can see here on the cowling, this is like 25% thinner than what he has over there. And that way, this is more gradual.
Is that because his Cowl has got more of a, you've got plenum in yours? Is that because of the way he's routing his air around the cylinder?
But the question is, why is his cowling thicker? Well, he has a original Herb Sanders cowling from Sport Flight. That's what I started with also. So what I did is I wanted to determine the minimum height here. So I took the original cowling, filled it with pour foam, sanded it to be snug, and then determined that my cooling was okay by shaping it. Once I knew I had the right shape with carbon on the inside, I put carbon on the inside, and then I ground off the outside, including the foam, and then taped it in with 2 more layers of carbon, and I had that new shape.
We did that on top and bottom.
Top and bottom.
Okay.
And on the side too. This was, I had flow that would suddenly go up here. And so this was stalling. So I filled this with foam and brought it out, I think 3/4 of an inch or so, to have it not recede so much. All this stuff in front of the propeller is really important to me because it not only lowers the drag, it also increases the propeller efficiency. The more you block the prop, the harder it has to work. So
You want to attach all as far back as you can get.
it should be attached all the way. And that's my small prop.
The fin on the top. What are you trying to bring up with that?
You know how jet engines have stators?
Yeah.
It's like a stator to straighten out the flow into the propeller because it rotates quite a bit. Similarly, if you look at the shape of the cowling, this side points down and this side points up. It's done for that same reason. Same thing with this. This goes into the inflow of the propeller, and that points down a little bit.
What kind of distance from the cloud to propeller face?
What's the ideal distance to the propeller face?
I see a big difference here to me.
Yeah, about 10 feet is perfect.
So the more
The more the better. And I measured years ago on the Very Easy, I measured about 1 knot more per inch of extension. Did you have a question?
Were the fences worth making one? Not for speed, but for control and low speeds?
They're not for low speed control. The fences are to reduce the span-wise flow. So if you want to have the air go fore and aft in a straight line, once it sweeps outward in the span-wise flow, you have a lot more drag proportionate to the extra length. So at high altitude, they probably make the airplane a little faster. Because the higher you go, the higher the angle of attack. The higher the angle of attack, the more sweep span-wise flow you have. Any other question on that?
this boat tail area, this is not anything thinner for the same reason that you found here.
Exactly. This is rather blunt because if I pull this in any further, I get separation here, and that's way worse.
Experimentally.
Yes, yeah, it's all fully oil tested. And I recently made new sidewalls here. You can see that those they're brought in like 1.5 inches right here. It's narrower. But you can't do that because your intake tubes are there. I made my own intake tubes that are a little higher up.
What are you letting out here?
That's the exit air for the cooler, for the oil cooler. Yeah, so it doesn't have to go up and around, and that helps.
It doesn't have to make a bend. You want it to go straight.
Right.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't have put a plenum over that to encourage the air only to come?
I could do that. I could make a plenum out of that. At some point, there's a weight issue too. Okay.
That's why it's made carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber weight.
Well, these cowlings are all carbon fiber, but they've been modified so many times. All the overlaps add up, and they are now over 10 pounds each. So I just made a cowling, a mold off of the bottom cowling to make a neat one piece, and I expect the weight to be about right around 4.3 pounds. I don't think you can afford it. Yeah. Ultimately, I might sell the mold to Aero Composites, And then they can make them. Their labor cost is a lot cheaper than mine. Yeah.
Well, your spinner, like the velocity, is also not pointed in the back. Is that simply for the structure of the spinner to have it the tip cut off?
Well, when you have all that float come together, it just the extra length doesn't do anything anymore after a certain point. And on a blunt trailing edge like this or here, there's actually a little bit of thrust that you get from that. There's always high pressure at the trailing edge. Okay.
Notice this bump out on this side.
Yeah, it's
Something we were having to get around because of the cylinder.
well, this step is there because I had to get around the exhaust pipes.
Heard about it before.
And this is there to house the injectors. So this is a 98-inch pitch propeller. I have another one that's 105 inches pitch. And it's very strange to fly with that because you're close to throttle and it's like a 8-speed automatic. It just does not slow down. It's because it's so much pitch. It's crazy. So
I thought the throttle when it stops.
Do you think they'll ever get a very even pitch profit?
the airplane with this propeller climbs at 2,400 feet a minute easily. And I don't really need more than that. But if I was to go with a constant speed propeller, it would be like 4,500 feet a minute or something. It would be absolutely crazy.
Well, you got a powerful engine already.
Yeah. This, when I climb out at 2,400 feet a minute, I'm at only 2,250 RPM,
What's your airspeed at that point?
120 knots.
What lane one way would you
I'm sorry?
What lane one way would you have?
Our runway is, I think, 2560 or so with 300-foot overruns. So not a problem. So, couple of little things now that I have the wheel pants off. I tried the thinner brakes. They were not enough. I tried the thicker brakes. They were plenty strong. So I went to the 3/8, the intermediate thickness. Those are perfect for that airplane. Now, if you look closely, here are some carbon laminates wrapped around. I reduced the thickness a little bit with a 16 grit body grinder, and then laminated carbon fiber on there with high temperature, very high temperature epoxy. So I don't need any heat shields for the brakes. And also, if you look at the brackets for the wheel pants, note that these brackets are in 2 pieces. And the reason for that is I can remove the front part of the bracket so I can get the caliper off without releasing the axle. Most people just put a head section bracket there and then take that off and the axle comes off. So, yeah. The gear leg fairings, spinners, flow guide, very easy cowls, all those, and wheel pants are available from Aero Composites now. So they sold them the molds.
Well, you've got to work that QD on them, right?
Yeah. So this is how light they can be, about 1.4 pounds.
That's light. That's very light.
And that's
saw one guy did 3D models for doing the forms for this, and they weren't the same shape, but I showed.
Well, as far as I know, this is the optimum shape. And it's just,
the mold, I think.
yeah, I have the mold for that. Dave has the same wheel pan, but his seam is further forward. So this seam is further back. The seam is further back to have maximum laminar flow on the thing. Anybody else? Thank you. So this was pulled in to have the minimum closing angle. That's important. And this is very contrary to the thinking of Gary Hertzler, who took it from up here and made it very shallow. Okay, it's questionable if which one is better. I think this one is better because I'm not sure that at high speed, when the deck angle is low, there's much attachment here, and the air, and if you, yeah, and also when you curve this up like this, then the air coming off of it points up, and you really want that air to point down to produce lift. So that's all I have on this airplane, I think, unless there's some more questions.
Can you talk about your Canard more?
The Canard, question about the Canard. It's a modified Ronks Canard, and
Very much so.
if you Google my last name and then Canard, you might get to a wind tunnel test that was done in southern France in Toulouse many years ago, and they found that it's slightly higher drag in the 160 knot range or so, 150, 160, but I don't fly there, and it was substantially lower drag at high speed. It has excellent handling characteristics, and it's excellent in rain. I noticed a very tiny bit of pitch up in rain sometimes.
You mentioned that you extended your elevator slightly.
Yeah, the elevator is longer and it's also taller. Look at how thick it is.
We go around.
Yeah, let's go around. So the Canard Incidence is dialed in so that the elevator is flush at high speed cruise.
High speed is 200.
250. And you can see that this is slightly proud of this surface. And that helps reattach the flow onto the elevator, so the top surface of the elevator actually produces some suction, and that makes a big difference. And if you look at Dave's elevator over there, he has a rather large step, and I've been bugging him to change that. But interestingly, this elevator in turbulence on autopilot, I don't see the motion. It doesn't move enough to see it. It's amazing. And how the autopilot manages that, I can sense that the autopilot works it, but it's just pressure. It's not, you don't really see the motion. Yeah, I had, because I had that tape with the turbulence with the zigzag on it, I used it, but it's too far back. If I want the turbulator strip, if I needed it, would be right here.
Yeah, would you experiment putting a turbulator a little bit further?
Yeah, I no longer think that turbulation helps at the speeds that we're going. I think it's good for a sailplane, but the benefit to drag ratio doesn't really come out very well. You asked me earlier about the wingtip. Yeah. So if you look at it from the end, there's an enormous amount of twist in that wingtip. And
Twisting.
this is twisted.
Yeah.
And what happened was I was guessing at it, and I had about well, let me start somewhere else. There is something called induced angle of attack change due to sweep. And that's why fighter planes, if you look at the F-22, they have a huge amount of twist in the wing. And Bert was apparently not aware of that back then. And I designed this new wing. I think you guys heard about that. And for the new wing, I had to design a new strake. And that's why there's this discontinuity, because that's the old wing with a new strake. With the new wing, this pairs in, matches the wing. But you can see that the leading edge of the strake used to be down here. Now it's 4 inches higher. So this moved way up. And that's because there's so much sweep here. You need that twist. Similarly, with the sweep on the wingtip, I needed the twist, and I didn't know how much. I don't know how to calculate that. So I think I had like 3 or 3.5 degrees in it.
Starting
Yeah.
from the beginning of
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I tough tested it, and I put a tuft right here, and at 250 miles an hour on level flight, that tuft was sticking straight up. Straight up.
That's not drag at all.
It was, I didn't think it would be possible. So then I cut it here, and I cut it here with a hacksaw, and put some clamps on it, and I twisted it, and glued it back together. And then I tried it again, and I made like 2 or 3 changes, 2 or 3 times. And the way I tested it is that I wanted to have that tuft to just come up in level flight. And when I push on the stick and go down a little bit, I wanted that to roll back. That told me that I was at the right angle of attack. And that's how I left it and never finished it.
How did you determine the angle on your strake, since you changed the incidence angle on the strake?
It's also a guess. But the strakes are smaller by quite a bit. It went from 50 or so gallons to 44, or a little less than 44. But I also extended the fuel all the way to here, and I made the luggage area a little bit smaller. And the minimum speed went improved by about 1.5 miles an hour. And on the top end, was 4 miles an hour faster with these strakes. So that's a huge expansion of the envelope.
Acting like a wing cost.
It is a little bit, yeah. Yeah. Due to this canard, I can't get to a high enough angle to make the borderlands work. It doesn't go over like 11 degrees deck angle. Just go. Sorry? I can, my good landings are like 63, 65 knots, touchdown speed. Those are the good ones. If I don't get it quite right, it's 68 or 70 knots. So But yeah, the Canard is at a little too low an angle of attack. So I don't have the power to raise the nose far enough. So, and the Vordelons on the leading edge also slow down the airplane at high speed quite a bit. On the very easy, I think they were like 2.5 miles an hour.
I noticed one of the gangsters on that side that had the tops. It's the orange and white one. It's over in the home hills area.
Okay.
And it just has cups and not the other one.
Yeah, the cups were really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely should come off.
And that plane has like 1,000 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, there are people fly these, they're antiques now, you know, and they want to keep them in the original shape. Any other questions? Yeah.
A lot of guys, when they go from a 235 to a 320 or 360, they'll extend the nose to push things forward to make up for the weight. Are you able to get away with not adding much ballast by lightening up the back end enough to?
That's a good question. The whole weight situation, weight is extremely important. And I much rather obviously move stuff around to get the weight and balance right. The problem with the long nose is it makes it a heavier airplane to begin with. And it also, the long nose is destabilizing. So this is slightly longer, not very much, maybe 5 inches or so. Don't remember. But I kept that to a minimum. I don't carry any ballast on this airplane. But the reason is probably because the whole airframe is light. The heavier you are, most of the weight will be added in the back. So once you lighten up your airplane overall, the CG will move forward by itself. So on the lightweight cowlings are important. That's why I made a mold just to save 6 pounds. So the ailerons can also be a lot lighter. They can be there. These are 6 pounds each, fully counterbalanced, and I think I can make them at half that weight. So the rudders could also be lighter, and I'm probably going to make a smaller rudder soon. So the tall rudder, the special performance rudder like Dave and I have, as we discussed in the COBA in the forum, they create a lift vector that is above the airplane that causes adverse roll during a turn. So moving the rudder center down reduces that. So you should be able to side slip better.
How do you sump your fuel tank for water?
How do you sump the fuel tank for water? That's a good question. I don't. And I don't do it on my car either. But the reason is this has a race car type fuel injection in it, and it circulates fuel all the time. So if you do get water, you get gas right behind it. And at the most, it'll be a burp or several burps. But it's generally with those circulating systems, it's not a problem. But one more thing on the fuel system, one of the best modifications I did is I put a header tank in there. And the way it works is I have a transfer pump. Well, first of all, you can't reach there with the normal pump. You can't get the nozzle there without climbing into the back seat, and that's, of course, too much work. So I have a transfer pump that transfers fuel from this tank, and only from this tank, into the header. And the most common way to have a problem is with a system like that is when people forget the transfer pump and then they overfill the header tank and it dumps out the breather. There are dozens of airplanes that have crashed for that reason. So what this has a standpipe in there so that when it's full, the fuel falls back into this tank. So I can leave the transfer pump on all day. And it always keeps this full if I want to do that. So I can run this one dry, then I can run this dry, and then I can use my 11 quarts of backup fuel to land if I have to. So I have no unusable fuel in this. And also, no, it's below the tank. It's an external. Yeah. From a maintenance standpoint, the internal pumps are difficult. But also, as I said, the leading edge was raised quite a bit. So in the level flight position, all the fuel goes to the back. It's almost like a sump blister by itself, you know. So I need, with this raised incidence, I need quite a low angle of attack before I even unport when I'm low on fuel. There was another unintended benefit of the raised leading edge.
So the pump only draws from the header tank.
The pump draws from this tank and pumps into the header tank.
The fuel pump to the engine.
No, the fuel pump draws from whatever I have selected. I have left, right, and aux.
Just the fuel for the engine.
For the main pump. Yeah, there are two main pumps. And Michael just noticed that this is flush. These fuel caps normally have a metal ring that's flat. And so you install a flat metal ring onto a slightly curved surface, and it's aerodynamically ugly, right? So I love these caps because they're really high pressure steel. They're from a Mooney and from helicopter, mil spec cap, so that in an accident, when the fuel sloshes, it doesn't blow your cap off. Positively locking, but they come with a metal neck. And we made a mold to make a carbon fiber neck. And since I had the mold for the Strakes, I marked where the cap is. I made the collar a little thicker, put some 80 grit sandpaper right there, and I sanded it until I had the contour perfect. So that's why you don't see any protrusion there. And there's no micro on it either.
You don't have any fuel sumps or extra tanks underneath the passengers?
No. With the header, it's not needed.
Okay.
If I want to run it with the nose down, I just turn it to the header. If this is too low.
Now, you run 100% of the engine off of the head, right?
No, I run the engine off of left or right or the aux tank.
Okay, so it is
There's a
like
three.
a very
Yes, except at the very easy didn't have left and right separated. Yeah. So that is just a great modification. You have those, whatever happens on the main tank system, you have those 11 quarts, 10 or 11 quarts, and that's always enough to get you down.
It's always an argument that I've found about having the things being coupled so you don't have the left or right. And I'm thinking to always have an option. And with you having an option, the very easy design does have its benefit. That you do have an option. If you have a transfer or a problem,
Yeah,
there is an option. You have that plus one.
exactly. I have an extra option. But here's the problem with the very easy that I had once. When I left home with a 27-gallon tank here in the back seat to fly in the Palm Springs to Chicago race many years ago. Non-stop, huge race. And I was in a hurry to get out of the airport, of course. And about 15 minutes out, the engine quits. I had the thing loaded with fuel, right? And I had no fuel. What happened was I forgot a gas cap, and it siphoned everything out. And because the left and right is not separated, it siphoned the fuel from the right tank into here, and I was showing full fuel in this, but the bottom was sucking air. That made the engine quit. So
probably very similar to that.
yeah.
Where it's acting off the one side of it.
So this is one reason why separating the tanks is really nice. You could have a bird strike and have a little hole, and it'll take all your fuel away, and you crash with half a fuel tank, and you just can't get to it. So are you okay? That's a good question. How do I vent all three? All three tanks, especially if you drain fuel from one tank into another or pump it from they have to have the same vent pressure. They have to be vented at the same point. So all my tanks are vented right there. All three tanks are vented right there. And of course, the header to this are vented together through the drain pipe, the standpipe. That acts as a vent between the two. So I didn't really, I don't think I have this vented any other way. I don't think I have a vent on the header tank. It's just the drain pipe vents to this and this vents to the top. Now, if you make a vent like that, you have some stupid bird piling itself up on the vent, and you lose that vent, right? So there's a little hole underneath, so that if something blocks it from the front, it still vents on the bottom.
So do you have an electric or engine-driven fuel pump driving fuel from the main tanks to the engine, or only into the header tank?
I have 3 pumps.
Okay.
And one is a low pressure, low volume transfer pump. And that pump only transports fuel from the left tank to the header tank. No other purpose.
Okay.
And then the engine, or the pump for the engine, is a high pressure, high volume pump. And I have 2 of those in parallel. And I don't have an engine-driven pump. Engine-driven pumps take a fair amount of horsepower and claptrap inside the accessory case that I don't want to have. But what is fundamentally flawed with the standard Bendix system, in my opinion, is that the pumps are in series. So if you have an engine-driven pump and it bursts its diaphragm in the worst possible way, your boost pump, your backup pump, can actually pump fuel into the engine. And if you have a double diaphragm failure, which has happened, I've seen a video of or a movie of a radial engine doing that, get pumped full of fuel, and it blew up and blew off the wing. Just left the airplane. So the proper way to do that is to use 2 electric pumps and put them in parallel. They have a check valve in them anyway. You don't need an external check valve. Put them in parallel and turn one on or the other. Then you have full redundancy. And that's what I have. That's what I think is the best setup.
You have screens before and after.
In terms of filtering, what I did is I have a filter under my coming out of the valve.
Okay.
That's a coarse filter. It's a 40 micron filter. And then in the back is a 5 micron filter. So obviously the front one captures all the dirt, and on the one, the 5 micron filter is downstream of the fuel pumps, and all I see in that is the dust from the brushes. There's always a layer of black powder in there, which is from the brushes.
You still have the screens on your pickup, right? In your tank.
Yeah, there's a wire mesh screen. Yeah. Yeah.
Back on interview circle, right?
On the very easy, since I'm always working on the airplane, but I don't want to do basic maintenance if I don't have to. What I did, I put a 5-micron filter. Very easy also has the same fuel injection system. And I put a 5-micron filter on each tank. And then since they're draining together, and the theory was, first of all, the filters don't clog up at the same time. So if one of them is clogged up, you would see the difference in the left tank and the right tank. So there's no maintenance on the filters. You just wait for it to be different, and that's when you check it. So. Anything else? Dave, should we look at other airplanes or?
You guys want to go to other planes?
Any other questions?
Can we wind it up?
Sounds good to me.
I got too many questions. It's like my head's exploded already. So that's all I can
see from cutting off the inside of your elevator, making that fix to see
Oh, that's a really good question. What's the benefit of these little fillets? This is what we call a horizontal fillet. And a lot of these modifications are done because I know they are right without really seeing any benefit. But any kind of gap here is a huge pressure bleed. It has to be bad. And the reason why it's this thick and not thinner is because I expect the boundary layer to be about that thick. So if you have deflection, even on landing, with any positive deflection of the elevator, it separates the entire boundary layer on the fuselage all the way back. So regardless of being able to measure what it is, it has to be better. So you can't, I mean, it takes like 4 horsepower to go 1 mile an hour faster. And to measure 1 mile an hour is already really hard. But if I reduce the drag to eliminate the need for just 1 horsepower here and there, it's a lot of changes that are worthwhile doing.
VFR, so that the rest of people will know that.
Same thing with this. If you look on the other side, I put what I call a horizontal fillet on it. I never got around to doing it here, but it's on the other side.
You do an oil to see if it's making any
Yes,
difference.
yes. And what happens with this, when I flow tested it, there's a line that goes out like this, and from here to here, there's no oil, there's no flow. And when I put that horizontal fillet on there, it narrowed that down to almost nothing. So it was I could make the improvement visible, but not measurable.
So, what do you think?
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys.
In San Jose, California.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Central and the South Bay. I did a long flight all the way around far north of Virginia.
Thank you, Klaus.
South
Yeah, now I have to take care of